deadbolt wouldn't turn. I stood in the hallway at 12 minutes past midnight, key in hand, and I tried it again because that's what you do when something doesn't work the first time. You try again. Then I pulled the key out and held it up to the dim light of the emergency exit sign, like maybe somehow it had warped in my pocket during the cab ride home from the airport. It hadn't. It was my key. It had been my key for 2 years and 4 months, and the door in front of me was the door to apartment 4B, which I had paid first, last, and a security deposit on the previous September. I tried a third time. I jiggled it. I pulled the handle toward me, then pushed it away. Nothing. Then I heard the elevator ding behind me, and I turned around, still holding the suitcase I had been dragging since LAX, and there they were, my mother and my father, standing in the hallway of my building, at midnight, wearing coats, like they had been waiting. "You don't live here anymore," my mother said. Just like that. Not hello, not how was your trip, not we need to talk. Just that one sentence delivered in the voice she used to use when I was 11 and had broken something expensive. I think I laughed. I'm not even sure. I think I made a sound that was supposed to be a laugh and came out more like air leaving a tire. "What are you doing here?" My father wouldn't look at me. He was looking at the carpet, at his shoes, at the fire extinguisher on the wall behind me. My mother was the one with the script. She always had the script. We took care of it. There was an emergency. The lock had to be changed. "You're spiraling, and we weren't going to wait for you to hurt yourself." I want to tell you that I said something smart back. I want to tell you I stood my ground and demanded answers. I didn't. I think I just stared at her, and I think for about 10 seconds my brain refused to process the words she had said because they didn't fit into any version of reality I knew. Spiraling. I had been gone for 9 days at a software conference in San Diego. I had texted her a picture of the beach. I had eaten tacos with 2 coworkers and gotten food poisoning from one of them. That was the extent of my spiraling. "Mom," I said, and my voice was small, and I hated that it was small. "Mom, what did you do?" "Go to your sister's place. We'll talk about this tomorrow." My sister's place is here. My sister doesn't have a place. I have a place. This is my place. She didn't answer. She just looked at my father, and my father finally looked up. And he gave me the same expression he used to give me when I asked him to defend me against her at parent-teacher conferences. The expression that says, "I'm sorry, but she's already decided." I stood there in the hallway for I don't know how long after they got back in the elevator. Long enough that the motion sensor lights at the end of the corridor went off, and I had to wave my arm to make them come back on. Long enough that a neighbor in 4D opened her door, looked at me, looked at my suitcase, and very quietly closed her door again. I dragged the suitcase down 4 flights of stairs because I didn't trust myself to stand still in the elevator without falling apart. I sat on a bench outside the lobby. It was 41 degrees. I called my best friend. She didn't pick up because it was midnight. I called her again. She picked up and I said her name, and then I couldn't say anything else for about 30 seconds, and to her credit, she just waited. I'm 36 years old. I have a master's degree in computer science. I make $140,000 a year as a senior backend engineer at a healthcare data firm. I have an emergency fund. I have a 401k. I do my own taxes. I am, by every reasonable metric, a functioning adult human being. And I spent the rest of that night in a Hilton Garden Inn off the freeway because my mother had decided, somewhere in the past 9 days, that I was a danger to myself and needed to be removed from my own home. I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed with my coat still on, and I drank the bad coffee from the little machine on the dresser, and I waited for the management office of my building to open. I had this idea, this stupid, hopeful idea, that there had been a mistake, that a paperwork mix-up had happened, that when I walked into that office at 8 a.m. and explained who I was, somebody would say, "Oh my God, I am so sorry. Let me fix this immediately." That part, at least, came true. Just not the way I imagined. The property manager's name was on the door, but I'll just call her the manager because I'm still grateful to her in a way that I don't fully know how to express, and I don't want to put her name on the internet. She was in her late 50s, gray hair pulled back, reading glasses on a beaded chain. She had a coffee mug that said, "World's Okay's Grandma." When I walked into her office at 3 minutes past 8, I was still in the clothes I had flown home in. My eyes were swollen. I probably looked like exactly the kind of person someone might describe as spiraling. I told her my unit number. I told her my name. I told her that my key didn't work. Her face changed. She typed something into her computer. She typed something else. She picked up her glasses, put them on, and stared at the screen. Then she took the glasses off and rubbed the bridge of her nose, and I watched the color leave her face in real time. It's a thing people say in books, the color drained from her face. But I had never actually seen it happen until that morning. She went the color of paper. "Honey," she said, "can you give me a minute? I need to make a phone call." "Is something wrong?" "Just stay right here. Don't go anywhere. Please." She left her office and closed the door behind her, and I could see her through the glass standing at the front desk, talking to the leasing agent, both of them looking at the same screen. Both of them gesturing. The leasing agent was a young woman, probably 23, with the kind of haircut that suggested she had a podcast. The manager said something to her. The young woman covered her mouth with her hand. When the manager came back, she sat down across from me and folded her hands on the desk. "I want you to listen to me very carefully. There's been a work order filed on your unit 3 days ago. The work order was approved as an emergency lock change due to a documented mental health crisis of the tenant. The supporting documents include a photocopy of your driver's license, a signed letter authorizing your immediate family to assume tenancy on your behalf, and a statement claiming that you had voluntarily surrendered the unit because you were entering an inpatient treatment facility." "I didn't say anything." "Sweetheart," she said, "did you sign any of those documents?" I was at a conference. I was in San Diego. "I have my badge in my bag." She nodded slowly. She turned the monitor toward me. There was a photograph of a driver's license. It said my name. It said my address. It said my date of birth. The photograph was of a woman who was not me. It was a woman who was younger than me and lighter-haired and whose nose was different to mine and whose left eyebrow had a small scar that I did not have. I had never seen this photograph before, but I knew the face. It was my sister. I want to tell you about my sister because nothing about the story makes sense without her. My sister is 4 years younger than me. She is, in the language my mother prefers, sensitive. In the language of every therapist who has ever tried to help her, she has unmanaged borderline traits and a substance problem that nobody in my family is allowed to name. She's been arrested twice, evicted 3 times, and rehabbed once, briefly, before my mother decided that the program was being too harsh with her. The first time she stole money from me, I was 22 and she was 18, and it was $300 from a checkbook I had stupidly left in a kitchen drawer at our parents' house. My mother explained to me that my sister was going through something and that bringing it up would only make her worse. The most recent time she stole money from me, I was 33 and she was 29, and it was $1,900 in unauthorized charges on a credit card she'd memorized. The number of during Thanksgiving dinner. My mother explained to me that my sister was going through something and that pressing charges would tear the family apart. So I knew, sitting in that office, looking at a photograph of my sister wearing a wig and presenting my driver's license, exactly what had happened. I knew it before the manager finished explaining. My parents had needed somewhere to put my sister. My sister had nowhere to go. My sister somehow had needed an apartment that was already paid through the end of the lease and was conveniently located and conveniently empty for the next 9 days. And my mother, who had been the family's general manager for 40 years and who had never met a problem she couldn't solve by overriding someone else's autonomy, had decided that the solution was to simply transfer me out of my own life. "There's something else," the manager said. "The work order has an audit trail. Every change in our system gets logged. Whoever filed this paperwork did so from a public terminal at one of our sister properties. But the IP address connects back to a guest account that signed in 14 minutes earlier. The guest account is registered to your mother. Why would she do it from another property? Probably because she thought it would create distance. It doesn't. The log captures the user, and the timestamp lines up with a building entry record from that property. Someone scanned in with a guest fob registered to her at 4:18 on Tuesday afternoon. I felt very calm in a way that worried me a little. Where is my sister right now? That's the other thing I need to tell you." She paused, and she looked at me with eyes that were not happy about what they were about to say. "Your sister is in your apartment. She has been living there since Wednesday. We have her on camera entering with the new key. We have your parents on camera escorting her in with several large bags. My parents are here? In the building, they're upstairs, helping her settle in. They came in about 40 minutes ago through the side entrance. I want to say something now that I didn't understand until later. There's a version of this story where I get angry in that office, where I scream, where I cry, where I demand to be let into my apartment, where I make a scene. That's not what happened. What happened is that I sat in that chair and I looked at this woman who I had said hello to maybe 6 times in the 2.5 years I lived in that building. And I asked her one question. What do we do? She picked up her phone. We call the police and we wait for them to get here, and we do not let anyone in or out of that unit until they arrive. And honey, I'm going to ask you to stay in this office because I don't want you within 50 feet of that apartment until we have witnesses. Can you do that for me? I nodded. Good. Because I have done this job for 28 years and I have never seen anything like this, and I will be damned if I let it happen on my watch. That sentence is one I think about a lot. Not because of what she said, but because of the way she said it. She wasn't performing for me. She was furious. Quietly, professionally, completely furious. And she did not know me. She owed me nothing. And she sat there in that office and she made phone calls for me for the next 90 minutes, and she was the closest thing to a parent I had had in years. The officer who arrived was a woman in her 40s, calm voice, dark hair, asked a lot of questions. She listened to the manager first, then to me. She looked at the photograph of the fake driver's license. She looked at the audit trail. She made a note of the timestamps. She asked me to confirm, in writing, that I had not signed the surrender documents and had not authorized anyone to act on my behalf in any tenancy matter. Identity theft, forgery, fraud, she said, more to herself than to me. Felony in this state, all three. Let's go have a conversation upstairs. We went up the elevator together. The manager came with us because she had the master key. We knocked. Nobody answered. We knocked again. My mother's voice came through the door, casual and bright, the voice she used to use when she wanted to convince a neighbor that nothing was wrong. Who is it? Property management. We need to speak with the tenant. She's not feeling well. Can we do this another time? The officer stepped forward. Ma'am, this is the police. Please open the door. There was a long silence on the other side. Then the door opened, and there was my mother, in a cardigan I recognized from at least 15 years of Christmas photographs, with an expression of practiced confusion arranged across her face. Behind her, in the living room of my apartment, in front of my television, on my couch, with her feet on my coffee table, was my sister. And next to my sister, holding a roll of paper towels for no reason I have ever been able to explain, was my father. I want to describe the next 45 minutes carefully because they were the strangest 45 minutes of my adult life. The officer asked my mother to step out into the hallway. My mother refused. The officer asked again, more firmly. My mother said that this was a private family matter and that the police had no business interfering. The officer informed her that, on the contrary, identity theft was very much police business, and that she could either step outside voluntarily or she could be removed. My mother stepped outside. My sister, on the couch, looked at me for the first time. She'd been pretending I wasn't there. She did the thing she always does when she gets caught, which is to make herself look smaller, like a child who has just spilled juice. She wouldn't meet my eyes for more than a second. I didn't do anything, she said. Mom said it was okay. Mom said you signed everything. You wearing my sweater, I said. She looked down. She was. It was. It was a cream-colored cable knit thing I had bought in Iceland 4 years earlier. It had been in my closet. In my closet, in the apartment that was supposedly hers now. I did something then that I had wanted to do for a long time and never had. I asked the officer if I was allowed to ask my sister to empty her purse and her suitcase. The officer said that since the unit was legally still in my name and since there was probable cause that stolen property was involved, yes, I could request a search, and if my sister refused, we could secure a warrant. My sister, who has never been good at math under pressure, calculated quickly and decided that handing it over voluntarily was a better look than waiting for a warrant. In her purse, I found my passport, which I had left in my desk drawer. I found a credit card that had been in a file folder in the locked filing cabinet, the key to which had been hidden in a coffee mug I never used. I found 3 pieces of jewelry that had belonged to my grandmother on my father's side, who had left them specifically to me in writing in a will that my mother had been very unhappy about for 14 years. In her suitcase, I found my laptop. I found my external hard drive. I found a hat box full of paperwork from a filing cabinet in my office, including my passport renewal documents and a folder labeled with my birth certificate. The officer documented each item. She photographed them. She bagged the ones that constituted clear evidence of theft. My sister cried. My sister apologized. My sister told me she loved me. My sister said that Mom had made her do it, that she hadn't wanted to, that she had been homeless and scared. I did not say anything back. I have nothing to say to my sister anymore. I have not had anything to say to my sister since I was 22 years old, and $300 came up missing. In the hallway, my mother was making her case to the officer. I could hear pieces of it. She was saying that I had been unstable for years. She was saying that I had threatened to harm myself. She was saying that the entire family had been concerned and had been forced to take action when no one else would. She had a folder. She had brought a folder full of what she called documentation, which she was now pressing into the officer's hands. The officer accepted the folder and then handed it to the manager and said, very politely, that they would review it, but that none of it changed the fact that several state laws had been broken in the past 5 days. Here's the moment I want to remember forever. The manager, who'd been quiet for most of this, opened my mother's folder. She flipped through it. She held up one of the pages. "Ma'am," she said, "is this the doctor's letter you submitted with your work order?" "Yes," said my mother. "Our family doctor wrote it. Our records show that this letter was uploaded from your guest account at our Parkside property on Tuesday afternoon. The metadata on the PDF shows that it was created on a home computer 32 minutes before you uploaded it. The author field on the document, which I'm guessing you didn't think to remove, lists your name as the author, not a doctor, not a clinic. You." My mother said, "That's not possible. It's right here, PDF properties. We pull this on every document submitted because we've had problems before, always with families." My mother looked at my father. My father looked at the carpet, again, like he had at midnight in the hallway, like he had at 15 kitchen tables before this one. "And the driver's license you submitted to verify the surrender of tenancy," the manager continued. "We ran the photograph against the DMV record on file for the named tenant. The DMV photograph matches our security camera footage from the past 2 years. The photograph you submitted does not. The face on the document you forged matches the face of the young woman currently sitting on the couch." My mother said, "There's been a misunderstanding." The officer took her by the elbow. Gently, professionally. She walked her toward the elevator, and a second officer who had arrived during the search and who I hadn't seen come in did the same with my father. My sister was already in handcuffs, sitting on a chair in my own kitchen, because the officer had decided that the stolen property in her possession was sufficient probable cause to detain her on the spot. I watched my parents leave my apartment in custody. I want to tell you that I felt triumphant. I want to tell you it felt like winning. It didn't. It felt like watching a piece of furniture you had lived with your whole life being carried out by movers and realizing that you don't recognize the room without it, and that you don't know yet whether the room is going to feel smaller or bigger when they're gone. I sat down on my couch in my own apartment for the first time in 9 days. The cushions still had the indent where my sister had been sitting. There was a glass of wine, half drunk, on the coffee table. There was a Netflix account logged in on my television that was not mine. I sat there, and I cried for about an hour, and then I got up and I started changing things back. It took the district attorney's office 4 months to file charges and another 6 months to bring the case to a plea agreement. My mother was charged with identity theft, forgery, and conspiracy to commit fraud. My father was charged with conspiracy. My sister was charged with identity theft and possession of stolen property. My mother got 18 months, of which she will serve at least 9. My father got probation and community service because he agreed to testify against my mother in exchange for not going to trial. My sister got 6 months in a residential program, followed by 3 years of probation, which my mother described in a letter she sent me from jail that I did not open and that my lawyer photographed and added to the file as the cruelest thing I had ever done. I want to be clear about something. I did not press charges. The state did. Once the manager filed the fraud report with the property management corporation, and once the corporation filed with the police, the case left my hands entirely. People will tell you that you can make these things go away by being merciful. People will tell you that family is family. People in my family said both of these things to me repeatedly for the entire year that the case was being prosecuted. Aunts I had not spoken to in 5 years suddenly had opinions. A cousin I had played with as a child sent me a 4-page email about forgiveness. My father, before his plea was finalized, called me from a number I didn't recognize and asked me to write a letter to the judge on his behalf. I did not. I did not write a letter for any of them. I did not visit any of them. I did not attend the sentencing. I did not pick up the phone when my mother called collect from a county facility. I changed my number twice. I moved eventually to a different apartment in a different part of the city because the building manager, who I will always be grateful to, retired in the spring. And the new manager didn't know me, and I didn't have the energy to explain. People ask me sometimes, when this comes up, whether I miss them. I think the honest answer is that I miss the version of them that I made up when I was 7. I miss the mother who came to my 5th grade science fair and told me she was proud of me even though my volcano didn't work. I miss the father who taught me to drive in a parking lot one Sunday morning and didn't yell when I clipped a curb. Those people existed. They were real briefly, but they were not the people who stood in a hallway at midnight with a false statement of mental crisis in their hands and told their 36-year-old daughter that she didn't live there anymore. Those were different people. Maybe they were always different people, and I just couldn't see it. Maybe everyone in a family takes turns being someone they aren't, and I just happened to be the one who got cast as the villain in their last performance. What I learned is this. The most dangerous people in your life are very often the ones who get to call themselves family. They have keys. They know your birthdays and your social security number and your mother's maiden name. They have photographs of you in the bath when you were 2 years old, which they can use to convince themselves that they understand who you are and what you need. And the system, the whole apparatus of leases and credit cards and emergency contacts and medical proxies, is built on the assumption that family is the thing that protects you. Most of the time, that assumption is right. But when it is wrong in ways that are catastrophic. And the people who built the system did not write good safeguards for the times when it is wrong. The thing that saved me was not the law. The law was slow. The thing that saved me was a property manager with a coffee mug from her grandchildren and 28 years of experience and a habit of checking PDF metadata. She didn't know me. She had no obligation to me beyond the lease I had signed. And she looked at a document one Tuesday morning, and she felt that something was wrong, and she did not let it go. I bought her a card eventually. I bought her a card and I wrote in it, and I dropped it off at her office on the day she retired, and I did not stay to watch her open it. I don't know what she thought of what I wrote. I know what I wrote, though. I wrote that she was the first person in my life who had treated me like an adult who deserved to be believed. I wrote that this is a smaller compliment than it should be, and I wrote that if she ever needed anything at all, for the rest of her life, my number was on the back of the card and she should not hesitate. I never heard from her. I hope I never have to, but I keep my phone on, just in case. I think about that hallway sometimes. Not the cold, not the suitcase, not even the sound of the elevator closing behind my mother. I think about the version of me who stood there and tried the key a second time, and a third time, and a fourth time, because she still believed that the world she had built for herself could not be unbuilt by the people who had given birth to her. That woman was wrong about a lot of things, but she was wrong in a way that I have come to understand was not her fault exactly. She had been taught, very carefully, over 36 years, that family was the safest room in the house. Nobody had told her that some rooms have hinges on the wrong side. What I learned sitting in that office while a stranger with a coffee mug fought a battle that should have been mine is that every consequence in a life has a cause, and most of the time the cause has been building for years before the consequence arrives. My mother did not wake up on a Tuesday and decide to forge my driver's license. She had been forging the truth in our family for 4 decades. Each small lie she got away with taught her that the next, slightly larger one was safe. My sister did not learn to take what wasn't hers at 29. She learned it at 6, at the kitchen table, when someone covered for her the first time. My father did not look at the carpet in that hallway because he was a coward in that one moment. He had been looking at the carpet his whole life. Causes accumulate. Then one night, the result of every cause walks down a corridor and meets you at your own front door. I would like to say I was strong. I wasn't. I was lucky, and I was patient, and I knew enough to ask one good question. When the manager looked at me, "What do we do?" That question, asked instead of a scream, is something I'm still proud of. Wisdom isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a small voice that says, "I don't have to win this minute, I just have to not lose the next one." The endurance came later, and it was harder than the night itself. It took me 11 months to stop flinching when my phone rang. It took 2 years to sleep through the night. It took longer than that to stop wondering whether I should have written the letter to the judge, even though I knew I shouldn't have. Character is not the thing that gets you through the midnight in the hallway. Character is the thing that gets you through the 11 months of phone calls afterward, the cousins with opinions, the 4-page emails about forgiveness, the slow rebuilding of a life that has had its locks changed. I am still here. I am still in an apartment that is mine. I still keep my own keys. And when somebody tries to tell me that blood is thicker than the truth, I think of a PDF metadata field and a woman who knew where to look.